Calling the meeting of the PCC meeting today at 2:05. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Vicki, would you like to start us? No? Janet? Thank you.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll go on to item number 2, introductions. I'm Sam Casas, City of Richmond Paratransit and Chair of the PCC, and we'll go this way for the board first.
Landry Bowen with County Connection.
Charlie Anderson with WestCat.
Michael Dowgelli, East County Writer.
Debbie Toth, Central Provider.
Heidi Branson, Tri-Delta Transit.
Mallory Brush, AC Transit.
Janet Bilbis, City of El Cerrito.
Vicki Wojtowski, City of San Pablo.
Colleen Adams, West County.
Peter Engels, CCTA staff.
Irene Ortega, CCTA staff.
And now for our public, if you'd like to introduce yourself, start up here.
Ralph Hoffman, now I'm feeling better, seeing Mobility Action Council.
Ralph, oh wow. I didn't recognize you. Oh.
Elaine Welch, Senior Account Line Services. Linda Grubin, Carrying Hands. Mary Bruns, Lumber in the Spirit.
John Cunningham, Contra Costa County.
Welcome, everyone.
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
Can we just remind the guests and members to sign in on the sign? Members don't have to, but if the guests could all sign in on the sign-in sheet, I'll get up and I'll pass it around.
All righty. So what he said. The other thing is make this announcement. This was, God, I forget her name. We go through so many. Nikki's request, and I'll help you out with this too, Irene, is that if we use a lot of acronyms, just remember to maybe spell them out or say them out because it makes it really difficult for Irene and past note takers to understand what we may be talking about. So if you're using any sort of acronyms or verbiage that we may use a lot in our field, just, there may be times for you to just explain what you're saying. So with that, we'll move forward. Item number 3, public comment on issues not on the agenda. Are there public comments on items that are not on the agenda? Do we consider you part of the public, or are you on the news, or do you have news to share? News to share? Number 7? Okay. All righty. All right. Item number 4, proposal for Contra Costa Mobility Management Pilot. This is an action item. Peter, take it away.
All right, thank you. So this item is today is a special meeting in June. We normally don't meet in June, but in May, I requested that we have a special meeting in June to discuss the mobility management plan and proposal to take forward to the planning committee, then the authority in July. So that is what you have before you here. I can't even remember now when it was. Back several months ago, the CCTA board directed staff they took a look at the countywide Contra Costa mobility management plan that was adopted by the County Connection, done on behalf of the county using a New Freedom grant. And the CCTA board asked that CCTA staff take the plan out to all the RTPCs and get comments and come back with them with direction on how to move forward, or a proposal on how to move forward with the idea of mobility management. All in all, they like the function. They like the idea of mobility management from the functional perspective, but they were a little concerned about adopting the plan in entirety because it made some very big steps. So over the past several months, Rick Ramasier from County Connection and myself, we went to all of the RTPCs and received comments. I have provided you with the comments that were received, both written and verbally from the RTPCs. They are part of Attachment B. I provided response to those comments, and in doing so, we learned that there was general interest in mobility management, the idea of it, the concept of it, but countywide there was a lot of concern about moving forward with the way the plan laid out, moving directly into a CTSA. There was more interest to take smaller steps and potentially do a pilot that they could see some positive, see if the functions worked and if there was some positive response from both a cost effectiveness perspective as well as better trips for the passengers, or better service for the passengers. And there was several written comments in West County that focused more on the plan itself, regarding the governance of the plan, possible solutions or possible ideas other than proposed in the plan for the oversight committee, and things such as that. So taking all those comments into consideration, I developed a proposal for the authority to consider, also considering the funds that were available or made available for this pilot, and that proposal is presented as Attachment 1, and that it would be a pilot that would start in Central, Southwest, and East County, and it would have a limited time period that would be determined by the Mobility Management Committee that would make recommendations to the authority board, that the committee would put together a work plan as well as functions. One of the functions that the committee would need to do would be the web-based database that was part of the New Freedom Cycle 3 grant that CCTA received. They would do that on a countywide basis, so they would include all services countywide. That was what was written into the grant. And then they could come up with other functions to do. And one of the things that we had heard was there needs to be performance measures for these functions so we could see if they were effective or not. And there needed to be an evaluation at the end of the pilot that would give an opportunity to either stop the project or continue on in some form. So that's the proposal that we have taken forward. I would also say that we would continue from the authority's perspective to work with West County to try and solidify services that they want to provide in West County. One thing that we heard pretty strongly from West County is that there's a difference in both transportation needs and service areas in West County from Central County, and we believe that. The travel patterns are different. So it seems to make sense, at least in this early stage, that the other three parts of the county move forward, there's willing partners to move forward, and that we continue to work in West County through WICTAC to develop some programs in West County so that we can work with MTC to convince them that in Contra Costa County we're doing what we think's best in our county, and that's that will serve our passengers or our clients and the needs that they have for transportation. So I will leave the presentation at that and go ahead and take comments, questions.
All right, thank you, Peter. Are there comments or questions? All right. Michael?
I just have an observation. I mean, I certainly think this is a good idea that, they've decided to give a little bit more thought to this concept, but it seems that the western part of Contra Costa County is very aligned with Alameda County in the sense that even though their transportation needs are different from central and eastern, but they are part of the county, that they're also aligned, I mean, as in, it's called AC Transit for a reason. And I remember when I was growing up as a kid in Oakland, when it transferred from National City Lines and Key System over to AC Transit, the concept was there that it was sort of together. I guess at one time it was literally both counties together, but things have worked out that there's now independent contractors. So it's just an observation. And also a question about current funding available. There were two listed, the New Freedom Cycle 5 and 3. What would that money be used for? That's just a curiosity.
So the proposal would be that the New Freedom Cycle 5 funds are, I'm trying to remember. So 100,000 of that is the federal funding, and 25,000 would be the match. So a total of 125,000 that County Connection received basically to move forward with mobility management. Those funds came out of, or were dedicated to the Concord UZA. So most federal funding programs are based on I don't know if appropriations is the right word, but appropriations to urbanized areas. Concord's an urbanized area, Antioch's an urbanized area. In West County, they're part of the San Francisco-Oakland urbanized area. So it's not, and matter of fact, Concord also includes all the way down to Dublin area, Dublin-Pleasanton. So, and then the New Freedom Cycle 5 was the funds that, Cycle 3 was the funds that CCTA applied for, and that is, I might get the division a little bit wrong here, but I think it was 96,000 in federal funding, and then the remainder was the match. And that all came from the Antioch UZA, and we had talked about finding out from MTC if we could redirect those funds into mobility management. And MTC has come back to say the best thing to do would be to roll those funds into the Cycle 5 funding, but keep in there the project of doing the database. So that's why we would require that the mobility management pilot included that database, so that got done. And it was originally thought of as being a countywide project, so we think it's appropriate that the database continue to be a countywide database as opposed to this proposed pilot area of just the other three parts of the county.
Janet El Cerrito.
Peter, can you explain a little bit more how you envision the West County is going to be handled? Because there's absolutely, it doesn't state any funding coming that direction or any plan for us.
Well, I think the initial thing we need to do is work with WICTAC and the operators, and if there's any interested nonprofit agencies in working, coordinating, or with AC Transit, and identify how to move forward. Ultimately, from my understanding, is MTC wants us to do this as a countywide basis. I think if there's issues with that, which, I mean, Michael's right, there's a definite alignment issue that makes sense. And I've heard this from, several people in West County that, folks in West County tend to, from a transportation perspective, align more with Alameda County, and that's where their needs are. So I think ultimately we're going to have to convince MTC that that makes sense, not using necessarily county borders, but where people need to go. And then convince MTC that it's worthy of receiving additional funding to follow up with some of those potential programs.
Mallory from AC Transit.
Well, a couple of things. This actually, back in the day, and again, I will take full responsibility for lagging on the project and doing all that kind of stuff. Okay. We have completed our inventory, and it included Western Contra Costa in our inventory. That will be included in the Alameda County database, which they will share or can transfer, as we sort of demonstrated, a warm transfer between 211 systems. So and actually we've just recently participated in the National Council for Mobility Management's One Call, One Click. Because that's our goal, and I think in Alameda County, we have a robust 211 system. We all have 511, and then we have East Bay Paratransit as the largest call center. And so certainly with Janet involved in all of our committees, we've included information for Western Contra Costa in the 211 database, and they're included in our surface area of AC Transit, BART, East Bay Paratransit, as a matter of necessity, because we recognize the travel challenges that people have. And so I think that our next step, we have received NFF funding, that's New Freedom funding, for the marketing, training, and development, additional development of the database. And so what we're doing now, having done the base inventory, it really is an excellent survey that we can survey additional folks as they come available to us to include in the database. It's the update of the database, which will be critical, development of training in order to refer people to the appropriate transportation sources that they're looking for. West County is part and parcel of our project, and so that could easily be transferred to Central County 211 for their purposes. And then we're looking at marketing the system because, as I said before, everybody knows 411, everybody knows 911, everybody knows 511. Not a lot of folks know about 211, and that was our goal. So our website is up. I don't think you'd be able to see it yet, but it's not live, but it's up. In order for folks to actually have the web-based database that they can actually schedule their own trips. But in participating in this One Call, One Click webinar, and we had Guam, Oklahoma, Kansas City, we had folks from everywhere. There were 8 teams that were selected to participate in this, and we were one of them. And so we were very fortunate to learn from other folks. And so I think that will be really a telltale sign of how we can progress and include the West County, but certainly in our project and our database, West County is certainly included to the fullest extent. And, I talked to Joanne, we don't want to leave you out. We know that you're a big part of our area, our service area. And so as we move forward in developing the training and where to refer people to appropriate resources, I think that West County will understand that they are actually included in Alameda County's 211, which can easily be transferred to Contra Costa's 211.
Thank you, Mallory. Any other comments or questions? Or Peter?
Respond in support of what Mallory said. I think that's great, and I would encourage during this pilot, if this pilot occurs, that they work with you on that. If information and referral is one of those items, that they work with you. And you were here, I think, when the 211 Contra Costa people came, even though they, called and got Alameda 211. We need to figure out those little details, but I think that's potentially a good source. And ultimately, I would hope that our 2 counties can work in one as a whole as we go down the road. I just, there's some things that it appears from the comments that, we still need to work through. And like I said, I think CCTA wants to do this ultimately as a county, on a county-wide basis. I don't know that CCTA wants to necessarily be in charge of this forever, but they certainly want to get it rolling. So we'll continue to work with AC Transit, and I think you guys work with Alameda CTC as part of your grant on that as well. So just to kind of keep that moving forward. I think one of the concerns and the reason for moving this or proposing this as a pilot is there's some agencies that receive funding, that have received New Freedom funding from the central part of the county that have basically been told by MTC, you need to start, we're not going to start considering your applications anymore individually. You need to be part of a coordinated group. And so they're anxious to move forward with this mobility management concept and be part of that so that they don't start losing potential funding over it. There's also a source of funds through Measure J through Central County, Program 20, additional paratransit and funding for seniors and transportation programs for seniors and people with disabilities that individual agencies get. And Central County is saying we're interested in this more coordinated role that mobility management could play as we program those funds to those different agencies. So those are two funding considerations that are part of this proposal to move forward.
So I have Mallory, then Janet, then Charlie.
Well, and just, you know, I think Joanna said it a couple meetings ago that we're looking at, you know, two different methods of approaching the same issue. And we really believe in Alameda County that can be done through coordination efforts. And, you know, you look at down the path, the driver training or vehicle maintenance or anything that would be associated with a coordinated mobility management system. We understand also that the new Freedom funding is not sustainable. It's year on year on year, as is the GAP grants. They may be for multiple years, but it's not a sustainable source of funding, and that's really critical to all the agencies as we participate in the Transit Sustainability Plan, all those kind of things. So we have no objection to Central County taking a different path than we have taken, but we really think that we can achieve what we want to achieve via coordination of existing resources and then maximizing those resources within our county. And so how they finance their operations is something that's left to Central County, not to us. And so again, we have no problem with different strategies. We're just taking a different approach to our strategy.
All right, Janet, City of El Cerrito.
Yeah, I mean, Peter, I understand that those guys have that funding issue, but West County also has that funding issue. Without coordination, we too are being looked at for funding grant the same way. So, you know, it's kind of, I'll be honest, with this plan, what I really get the feeling of West County was, okay, you guys didn't like the plan, you're not in the plan, we're going to go with this, you know, segregate, sort of, here's the hills, this group is going to go with this mobility management that's going to help them with future grants and other forms of funding. And West County, okay, we might be able to help you with something, but you're kind of out there. That's really the feeling I'm getting. And it's, you know, that means they're going to be more set up to receive more funding than we will in the West County because we aren't coordinating, or it's like we have to coordinate on our own.
All right, Charlie, Westcat.
Well, you know, I wanted to speak in support of the staff proposal in the sense that, you know, this has been a process that, you know, was kind of a long process, vetted, resulted in a plan, and it is, you know, a structure for doing something, which I think we have to do in the county. And there was, I think, resistance to it in West County. And I think that West County does need to figure it out. I think it was more, from what, you know, all the discussions that I heard were more oppositional to what the approach was in the countywide plan, which is fine, but I think then it's incumbent on West County to sit together and figure it out. But I think in the meantime, we have the model that's going on, you know, in Alameda and West Contra Costa County, and then we have another structure that's in place, and we can get kind of experience from watching that unfold. So, you know, I think it's a good approach. It resolves the issue. We don't have to, you know, have months more of meetings to come up with a consensus position, but we can actually take a step, try a couple of things on a pilot basis, and then compare notes. And in the meantime, West County can sit together and have the discussions and figure out what is important and what approach might be most appropriate there, whether it's aligned with the Central County effort or whether it's aligned with the Alameda or whether it's something different. But I think, this moves the ball and, starts doing what we will need to do to just be prepared for all the funding opportunities and all the challenges we're going to be facing. So, I'm totally supportive of this position.
Debbie Toth, Rehabilitation Services of Northern California.
Oh, you got it right. That's good. So I would echo what Charlie said. My perception, and of course, I'm not involved in the WIC-TEC conversations, but my perception is that things in West County are vastly different than things in the rest of Contra Costa County. And based on the research that's been presented, if we're looking at the rider as being the focus of transportation, the rides are going to and from Alameda, not to and from Central Contra Costa as a general rule. And so how can we better align funding between Alameda and the western part of Contra Costa, and how can we better coordinate services that are where the rider at the center is utilizing in a geographical area that's the same. So I'm in support of this, one, because it, in a sense, speaking freely, we've basically been told if we want to get funded, it has to be part of a mobility management process. Beyond that, I think mobility management has been something that we've been talking about for over a decade in this county, wanting it to happen. I wouldn't say that I was necessarily 100% pleased with the aggressive and one-way approach to the mobility management plan as was presented to us. However, I think there was some good stuff in there. So not throwing out the baby with the bathwater and maintaining what was good about that and trying to make that move forward. In West County, it doesn't fit necessarily, was my perception of what was happening based on what I was reading in West County. And so I think moving forward in this aspect and looking to see what can happen between doing better collaboration with existing services, with existing patterns of transit might be the wise way to go. And that's just my 2 cents. Thanks.
Is there any other comments? There's one from the public. State your name and your agency, please. When he gets to the mic, Heidi Branson from Tri-Delta.
Is it on switch, Peter? Yeah, it's on. Oh, it is on. Got it. Thank you. Working? John Cunningham with Contra Costa County. Just a couple of quick comments. I did also want to speak in support of the staff proposal. It seems to make sense. It's been a long time coming. It seems it's been beat up at various committees at the RTPCs. CCTA and staff have been very responsive to the number of comments that have come in. I guess to the comment where on the surface of it, it may seem to, I guess, exclude West County at this point. It is a pilot project, obviously, and also just knowing the CCTA board, they're not going to tolerate any kind of discrepancy in terms of future funding or future attention. That board is very focused, hyper-focused even on equity throughout the county. So I'm completely confident that at the end of the pilot project, there'll be substantial thought put into making sure the entire county does benefit. Also, kind of echoing, I think, what Charlie said, this does move the ball forward. When this was discussed at the CCTA board some months ago, they were very supportive about, I guess, again, like Charlie said, moving the ball forward. There's some fairly pointed comments saying basically things need to change. This is a way to do it, and we need to get things happening. And I think this does do that, and it does satisfy the CCTA board's intent. Thank you.
If your members want to comment, come up and state your name and your agency. You can sit up in the front so that way we're not taking too much time.
Walking up to the microphone.
State your name and your agency, please.
I'm Joanna Pollack with WIC-TEC. So maybe today, I should have read it maybe Friday when it was released, but this is the first day that I've looked at the proposal, and backing it up to my surprise that it was a proposal to do something other than discuss today the mobility management plan. The next part of that was we didn't get a chance to opt out. We were maybe in a sort of timeline told to sit out, and then we would come back in at some point. And I don't have the authority, and I'm speaking beyond my elected level. I'm not an elected. But I think that the concerns in WECTAC were between, as I recollect, our board members not feeling like this had been fleshed out enough. And now that we have critiqued the plan and fleshed it out, we're told to stand aside while it goes forward. Yep. And I'm not sure that is what the board intended. I don't think that was at any point suggested by our WICTAC board to let it go forward with us maybe coming back into the picture at some date, but not really clearly. And one point I want to bring up is that Doctors Hospital is on the verge of closing, whether it closes or not. But a lot more trips will probably be going east to west, west to east. And some of these issues have to be dealt with at county-wide level. And I wouldn't want to leave the table. Now, if WECTAC chose to, and I'm again referring to our elected officials, if they chose to form our own mini mobility management center, I still think we need to be integrated with the county as a whole, as well as Alameda County. So, we don't want to be left out. And the discussion still, I'm glad to hear that the database is going to be part of West County is going to be part of that database. But I think we could lose an opportunity to coordinate if we are seen as non-players or bench warmers for the moment. That's my comment.
Thank you. Next speaker.
My name is Elaine Welch. I'm the ED from Senior Helpline Services. We have a volunteer driver program that's been going for 9 years in Contra Costa County. And I just wanted to say to Mallory and generally the group, as you are working, we work with AC Transit also because now we're in 2 areas of Alameda County. And both, we're moving into Central, we're in North. And so it's we have a lot of clients now and getting more drivers in West County. We have more flexibility because we don't have circumscribed areas that we have to serve, nor do we have borders now between Alameda and Contra Costa. And I just want to put my 2 cents in to please include us in whatever you're doing because we are really trying to coordinate and take down that border between Richmond, El Cerrito, and the Oakland, Berkeley area. The other thing I wanted to state on behalf of just our agency as a stakeholder in this, we have been told, as Debbie was saying, that we all of us in Contra Costa need to get on board with the mobility management movement. And without it, MAP 21 funding will not be considered for individual providers. So that isn't the reason we're on board. We're on board. We worked very hard for 1.5 years on this plan as a stakeholder. But I'm in strong support of what Peter has proposed. I hear what Joanna's saying. I think Contra Costa County needs to come together as a county and also work with the counties surrounding us. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Any other comments? Vicki? Sorry.
I just have a question.
Vicki from City of San Pablo.
I'm very new to my position, so bear with me. I just wanted to know, I guess, if and how the Mobility Management Committee would work with the PCC. Thank you.
Right now it's proposed to be a separate committee. So the Mobility Management Committee would advise on mobility management issues only directly to the authority.
Debbie?
And it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, but the meetings of this committee would be public meetings, that anybody could come to the meetings. I think that the issue is we are the Paratransit Coordinating Council. We deal with issues pertaining to paratransit, not necessarily volunteer driver programs, not necessarily door-through-door programs that aren't paratransit, not necessarily any of the other forms of mobility that are out there. So I don't know that it's necessarily a match. And I think, as I understand it, and you can correct me because you probably have read the plan a hell of a lot better than I have, but the function isn't to be under this committee, but I certainly think that we should be discussing. I think there's a big part of that that has to do with what we do. I just don't think that we are an all-encompassing body that represents what that's going to be looking at. But I think definitely it should be part of our role moving forward to pay close attention to what's happening there and participate in the meetings.
Any other comments? Okay, as chair, I am passing the gavel so I can ask questions. I'll be giving it to Mallory. All right. City of Richmond, Sam. Just clarification. It was my understanding, and speaking to some other folks, that we were going to be talking about the mobility management, Contra Costa Mobility Management Plan at the PCC. And here we have in front of us this pilot project, proposal for a pilot. Are we ever, as the PCC, going to discuss the mobility management, Contra Costa Mobility Management Plan? That's my first question for you, Peter.
You can discuss it right now if you'd like.
It's not here attached to our agenda, so we don't have it as backup. So will we?
Sure, we can discuss it at the next meeting.
Okay. Next question.
Would you like an action item on that?
That would be a great action item.
What would you like to propose?
That we provide comments on the Contra Costa Mobility Management Plan.
Okay. So you have the understanding that the Mobility Management Plan was originally adopted by the County Connection Board, and that any changes at this point would just be a new plan. We wouldn't go back and revise that plan.
Okay. Next question. I've been here, or next comment more so. There's been a lot of questions mentioned about West County is not on board, or there's all this opposition. But the letters that were received, let's see here. The board met, I don't speak for WICTAC, but on March 28th, there were several comments that were made, and different agencies and cities within West Contra Costa spoke on the mobility management plan. Much of it was supported a lot of the components of the plan. So I don't know what people are talking about, the opposition in West County. That's not clear to me. So on May 1st, the ED of WICTAC, John Nemeth, sent to CCTA staff a letter dated May 1st with all our comments. And those comments, as you can see, are in the back. Some of those comments were addressed in the back of this pilot proposal. So I just want to make clear one thing, that for some reason West County always gets a bad rap, like we're just rebel rousing and we're against things. And what I'm hearing now is the plan is not going to go forward, but we're now going forward with a proposal for a pilot, which does not include West County. And none of the ideas or suggestions that were brought forward by West County seems to even be addressed in the pilot, which has nothing really to do with corridors or coordination. More so of a mobility manager was one of the thoughts that were brought up. Instead of creating a CCTA, the idea was to have a mobility manager possibly hired by CCTA staff, and that the other one would also be that it would be the PCC that would be the committee. Because, in this day and age, I don't know about you, but I keep hearing from a lot of governmental agencies, a lot of government or political parties, even extreme ones, talking about duplication. They're talking about not being efficient. And I see the Mobility Management Committee being duplication. And especially when you go and you talk to folks who are wanting to see government streamlined, we're not showing them that we are streamlining government when we already have a committee the Paratransit Coordinating Council. So in its name, Paratransit Coordinating Council, coordination is what this plan is about. Isn't that what we're all told to do? In our name is PCC, is coordination. Paratransit is specialized transportation. It's not complementary services for the fixed route providers for providing them ADA paratransit. As we all know, that paratransit includes all different modes, whether that's volunteer driver program, travel training, demand response. Some folks even provide those services. So for me and for what was voted on at the WICTAC board meeting, made up of BART, elected officials, also elected officials from WestCat, elected officials from AC Transit, and elected officials from the different cities that were there, they were suggesting that there be a mobility manager instead of a CCTA, and also that PCC be the group that would move this forward. Now, the comments that were brought up in response to that are troubling. So on page 7 of this pilot project, I just like to address those 4 points because it deals with West County's comments about using the PCC. It says that PCC is more heavily represented by West County, so it would not provide a level playing field for other parts of the county. So when I'm here at the PCC meeting, I don't just represent West County. When we vote on things on a whole for all the county. Now, could the membership of the PCC change? Possibly. So the history is why are there 3 cities in West County that are on the PCC is I think the question that needs to be asked. The reason that needs to be asked is because Central and East County at one time back in '88 didn't become a provider did not apply to be a Measure C applicant. I think the only one was possibly Antioch, so I might be incorrect there. And they were also receiving TDA 4.5 money back in 1988. So in West County, it was WestCat and the 3 cities that decided to continue on and be part of that. And I feel, this is just now speaking, that because we're being told that we have this representation, that it's too heavy in West County, now you're not part of the pilot. That's the first thing that I think is very troubling about that, is that we in West County are not trying to heavily represent anybody. I mean, the other problem with this that was brought up in the letter was also consumers. And that's addressed in the second bullet where it says that the Mobility Management Committee is envisioned as a technical committee as a majority of the decisions and issues will be related to funding and operating technical issues. So on the issue of funding, if you go to your bylaws for the PCC, it mentions there that part of our duty as a PCC is to review and prioritize paratransit funding. So that is part of what we do. We review the ones from Measure J, and you all know we review the ones from New Freedom and from Section 5310 have come before this body. So that's something that PCC already does. Now, technical committee, I don't know, operating technical issues, I can understand that people may want to operate their operations differently. I mean, we have about 5 different fixed route providers here in Contra Costa County, so we do see the diversity there. But I also think that the strength of the PCC is that we have consumers. And I think our consumers here, we have East County consumers, we have West County consumers. Seems we have trouble in Central County getting that representation. Maybe folks who are in Central County could talk to some of their colleagues and maybe try to get more of them to serve on the PCC. But I think you as consumers of the PCC, you have technical skills. You know how easy or how hard it is to get over here to possibly a PCC meeting or to any other Lifeline services that you need to use, whether you're using ADA paratransit or any other type of specialized transportation. You're an expert, in my opinion, as consumers. So I'd like to address that there. And it does say, well, if there's consumer input, then go to the agency, they can go to the agency representative. Well, the Mobility Management Committee, if I'm looking at this correctly, and I could be wrong, it has 2 fixed route providers, 1 staff of CCTA, 1 Contra Costa County person, which was new because that wasn't in the plan. So I was wondering if I was referring to John Cunningham, which is later referred to in the table. And then there's a private nonprofit and public nonprofits made of two and 1. I don't know why they were split. But to me, I don't see the diversity and the equity that I see in PCC. And so did those elected officials in West County. They see the diversity, and they see the equity of having PCC look over these things. So PCC in itself also, in our bylaws, states as one of our purposes to promote, develop, and coordination of a comprehensive, integrated paratransit system. That in itself is mobility management. So I don't see how you can separate paratransit and mobility management. That to me, I just cannot see how they're separated. And one of the recommendations that was brought from on page 13 of this pilot on the table, it was bullet number 22, and this was brought from Transplan and Transpac. They concur that John Cunningham should be a Contra Costa County representative in the Mobility Management Committee. And here's the reason why from staff. And staff concurs with the comment. John has significant experience with paratransit and his knowledge of county departments and programs. So would it be extremely valuable to the pilot? So his experience is in paratransit. He's going to be part of this Mobility Management Committee. So as you can see, that expertise is needed for a Mobility Management Committee. So if expertise is needed for paratransit, then that person, or we should talk about getting a county representative of Contra Costa to serve on the PCC, since they have a lot of experience with paratransit. So I do not see a separation between mobility management and paratransit. Thank you.
Charlie?
Well, Sam, I have to respectfully disagree, actually, on a number of fronts. And first of all, I want to correct a misrepresentation about the WICTAC action. It wasn't the concurrence of all the agencies at WICTAC. It was communicating comments from various cities, largely from the city of Richmond, and then concurred with by the cities of San Pablo and El Cerrito. Westcat wasn't part of that, and so on. So it wasn't the consensus position in West County. I think that the issue of the PCC being the management group for this, we need to get into that, actually. But, I want to first take a step back and say that this, the development of this plan was a long process. A lot of stakeholder meetings, a lot of outreach, a lot of opportunities for comment. And it coalesced into a form that was presented and adopted by the 3CTA board, and then was circulated for comments, which were received. Unfortunately, West County's vision for the plan wasn't consistent with what was in the plan, and that was well articulated by you at the WICTAC meeting and in the comments that then were reproduced and sent in on the part of the other cities and concurred with by the other cities. But it seems to me that to then assume that after a long process culminating in a plan that you can disagree and open up a plan for a lot more process and discussion and so on, because of a disagreement on parts of the plan is probably not germane at this particular time, because I think that we do need to at least try something else. You know, we don't have to reach consensus because we won't reach consensus. And let me address the issue of the PCC and its role in the county. It is a body, a forum for users and transit operators to get together and discuss the way that paratransit is, deployed in the county, how it functions. It's the role of users in that process is critical, and that differs from a body that manages a function, that has a budget, that has a lot of technical aspects that are a little out of the day-to-day experience of the user groups. And the PCC functions very well, I think, as a user forum and a coordination forum, but not as a management group. And there are, a lot of things that day-to-day managers of public agencies and who receive funding, who apply for grants, and all of those can tell you the underlying reasons why the trips are not easy in the county, because they have an understanding of how all of those things are funded and all of the hurdles that go in through regulatory and other processes. And I think that would be a big learning curve for a PCC to try and get into that role and then manage essentially an employee or a function. So I think on a number of fronts, I think that the debate in a certain way is behind us, that it is important to sort of move forward with a pilot. It's a temporary thing. It's not a commitment for a long period of time. But it just gets things moving and provides experience in the area that we need experience in right now as a county. So I think that a lot of the objections, which were objections, because I was in those technical advisory committee meetings. I was at the WICTAC board meeting when staff spoke and articulated concerns. But I think that it is probably the time to bifurcate and move forward. And so, and it's my intent to support the motion. And
So I'd just like to make one comment. Sam, City of Richmond, I am not misrepresenting what happened in WICTAC. So I need to respectfully disagree with you, Charlie, because the letter I have in front of me from John Nemeth, who is the executive director of WICTAC, clearly states, Dear Peter, this letter summarizes the mobility management plan comments from the two WICTAC board meetings, March and April. The following comments were unanimously approved by the board on March 28, 2014, which included elected officials from WESCAT and others. So it wasn't a Richmond-focused thing. So this unanimous comments, people were not against the plan. There was just components of it that they were not in favor of in West County. So we do want to go forward in West County. We don't want to see this stop. We don't want to be opt-out. But if we are opt-out, we would like to see, I would like to see then of that $245, which is the total amount of the New Freedom amount. If I'm doing that correctly, the 125 and the 120 comes out to $245,000. If I read this correctly, this pilot tells me that all that money is going to be used in Central and South County, and that's not going to be applied for West County at all. So I would like to make a request, can part of that money be set aside for then West County to do its mobility management plan or pilot? Because this tells, from what I'm reading of this pilot, the pilot is stating that that New Freedom money is only going for those areas and not going to be used for West County, unless I'm understanding something incorrectly.
Larry, as sponsor of the plan, do you have a response to that?
Well, I think from what Peter said earlier, completing the database, which is part of that 240,000, that will encompass that West County that doesn't follow any RTPC borders. So I think there is a benefit in with respect to that part of the grant. And the grant for Cycle 5 was to hire a mobility manager to work to start coordinating at least some of the functions that were agreed upon throughout the extensive stakeholder and outreach process. And so I think trying to limit those benefits to RTPC borders might be a little premature.
For those who are not, what are RTCP borders?
I'm sorry. There are subcommittees within Contra Costa County, and so Contra Costa County has 4 different regions, and each with their own committees. And so when Rick and Peter went to go discuss the plan and get comments, they went to these regional bodies. And so there's West, East, Central, and South.
Charlie. Then Sam, then Michael.
Actually, just first a question. So, Peter, earlier you said that the funding for the New Freedoms grants were they tied to Concord and East County UZAs? So, in a sense, there is a West County benefit from the investment of this fund, these funds in a database. And it does seem like the benefits of the mobility management function on the pilot base will accrue to the UZAs that are essentially the source of the money for it. Now, a comment. What you read about the actions taken at WCTAC did not imply concurrence with the comments. It was forwarding the comments that had been submitted to WCTAC to CCTA. So there was no way that the WestCat board member unanimously concurred, but unanimously caused what comments had been received to be forwarded to CCTA. So I just want to, make that distinction that it wasn't unanimity of concept behind it, but it was a process thing that actually transmitted comments that had been heard.
Sam.
One of the issues that one of the members of the CCTA board had, or 2 of the CCTA board members had, is that it did not go to the RTCP, the Contra Costa Mobility Management Plan, that it didn't go to TransPAC and SWAT and Transplan and WCTAC. That was one of the concerns back in January, that this plan had not gone there forward. My question is, will this pilot be going to the RTCPs before it goes to the CCTA board? Because it seems like we're almost doing the same thing over again, and I want to make sure that those who serve on these boards are aware of this, so I don't come back and be told, I don't want an elected official coming back to me saying, I never heard about this pilot. So that's my question.
If the CCTA board directs me to do that, then I will do it. As a possibility, and I'm not saying this will happen, but just look through scenarios, the county connection can just decide to back out and take its money and do its own thing, and the authority won't be involved. So that decision will have to be made based by county connection and the partners it's trying to develop in this mobility management that they want to move forward with, as to whether they feel that the authority is dragging its feet on this issue and not moving it forward. I think there's ultimate ultimately, people want to see a county-wide program, and ultimately, I would like to see a county-wide program, but I don't think we're there yet, quite frankly. And I have to agree with Charlie. We went and presented the same plan to everybody. We presented the same program to everybody. Actually, with the benefit of WICTAC being last, we presented WICTAC with how we thought this might be as a pilot that included the whole county, and that it wouldn't be adopting the whole plan, but it would be a termed pilot that had an endpoint. But the WICTAC didn't want to hear that. They wanted to move forward with the plan and just bash the plan, which was fine. The plan had lots of flaws. I'm the first to admit it. But the focus became the plan and not how to move forward. And there was opposition. There was opposition to several issues in the plan, and that's fine. And these comments with the opposition and the comments will be forwarded to the Planning Committee and the authority as well. With all due respect to the suggestion from West County that CCTA hire somebody and pay them and do this, I as a staff person have to suggest that the idea of a pilot, the authority board, I mean, sure, they might want to do that. My suggestion as a staff person would be not to recommend that at this point. Maybe in the future, maybe if we see this works, but it's not the history of the authority to just hire people and then fire them in a year or two when things don't work. So that would not be a proposal that I would make at this time, but might make it later if the pilot proves to be successful. At that point, the authority also has to decide if it wants to operate a program or not, which was what mobility management would be, an in-house program. It carries with it different insurance issues. Currently, we don't do that. Currently, all we do is we oversee funding. We provide the congestion management agency program, and we oversee Measure J. We don't operate any programs. We contract all that out to other agencies. So that's a huge step. That is, that's adding a function to the authority that, we're just not going to, jump right into at the spur of the moment. And they're going to want to see that, hey, this, we want to see if this works before we make a full commitment to it.
I think that Sam's question was more of process. And so regardless of the vote today or this pilot project, as you have proposed, from what I understand, will not be going back to the 4 sub-regional groups for discussion. That this pilot proposal with the actions taken today by the PCC will then move forward to the full CTA board, for approval or action in July. Is that my understanding?
How I answered that when Sam asked it was that if they directed me to take the proposal back to the RTPCs, I would do it.
Okay, so that will be an option in your proposal with the action that this board takes today. Okay. Michael, you had?
It's just a point of order of sorts. What exactly is our jurisdiction then if everything that we've been talking about is that the PCC is really not something that needs to handle this? Why are we being asked to make a recommendation to the 2 CTA board?
Paratransit is, sorry.
Oh, no, I mean.
Paratransit is part of mobility management, but it's not entirely mobility management.
I'm going to make a proposal for action. Is everybody ready? Since we cannot get a county-wide census, I propose to decline the project as written.
The proposal pilot?
For the pilot program.
Is that a motion? Well, you have to make the motion if you're going to make a motion.
I move that. So I move, because she needs to write this down, so say I move.
I formally propose.
No, you have to say,
Before she makes this proposal, I feel like I need to say something. My board asked me to take them a recommendation, so I'm going to take them a recommendation. So the motion should be made in a way that either disagrees with the recommendation or is silent on the recommendation or agrees with the recommendation or agrees with the recommendation but with revisions.
make your motion, dear.
I propose that we decline the recommendation.
All right, so for the purposes of the PCC, you are making a motion to not accept the staff recommendation for the pilot project. Do I have a second? We have a second by, and I can't see your name over there, I'm sorry, Colleen. Okay. Is there discussion regarding that? Sam?
Yeah, I just think at one point there just needs to be, I would agree to decline on this proposal, because there seems to be a lot of contradictions. For example, we're not going to hire a mobility manager through CCTA, but then the plan says the work plan will include functions of the mobility manager that will complete during the pilot. So now there's a mobility manager. So it's very, very convoluted, and it's not really clear who's this mobility manager in this plan going to work for. So I would agree. I'll be in favor of your motion, Heidi.
So I think that it's to hire a consultant. I don't know if you can clarify that. It's not a regular staff position. It's a consultant who would be the mobility manager. I don't think there's any. It's not that it's a staff position. It's that there will be a mobility manager who's a consultant, not a permanent position in the CCTA, because the nature is that it's a pilot. And so we're looking to see if something can work. I want to caution those of you who are voting against this, that in voting against this and in taking a position that you don't support this, you're taking a position to oppose funding of the community support services that provide door-through-door services. I'm telling you, you are, based on the information that we got from MTC. You can shake your head at me, but this is what has been told to us. So to me, that's what that represents. I think that Charlie articulated the situation incredibly well, and I think the fact is that transportation is drastically different. At least in every PCC meeting I've attended for the last 10 years, I've heard that transportation is different in West County, and I think that's true. And I think that it doesn't preclude West County from participating in mobility management. It just makes it different for that portion of the county, and how do we incorporate them all? I think that question has been asked and answered, and that it takes longer. So come to the table with what we're able to come to the table with and move forward with. And I will say that in 2003, we were talking about mobility management from the 2002 Paratransit study, which was one of the findings, which is included in the expenditure language in the Measure J plan. Mobility management in this context somehow changed its meaning to match what the plan was that came up with. And that's not mobility management. And it's not our sole purpose as the PCC. Our PCC role is to advise the CCTA on issues pertaining to, not as specifically only mobility management. And we don't have that kind of role or power. I think my experience being a transportation provider in a small community-based organization, working in partnership with County Connection, working in partnership with Tri-Delta paratransit providers and serving this population, I think mobility management needs to move forward, and we're in the back if we don't step on board and start moving forward. So whatever it takes to get something forward moving with the money that we already have, not taking money from any other sources, I don't see why there's something wrong with forward movement, with the idea that eventually West Contra Costa is going to get together, as Charlie said, and figure out what works there, and the PCC is going to support that wholeheartedly. That's my opinion.
Just for clarification, this money has already been awarded. Cycle 5 has already been awarded, so they're not taking any money. They can't take any money away from us. It's future funding, and mobility management is the buzzword with MAP 21 on a go-forward basis. Okay, so we have a motion and a second from Colleen on the floor. Is there any other discussion? Peter?
I guess I feel the need to make a comment that the authority is looking at starting next year, putting together a transportation expenditure plan to extend or increase Measure J. I was hoping and am hoping to go forward and have a line item in that expenditure plan specifically for mobility management countywide. Unless we get something going and can prove it works, I'm not willing to do that. So we can wait another year or two, or we can start something.
Michael?
And again, I think this is going to be kind of a point of order, but apparently I have some concerns about a negative to the recommendation being a motion, because I think our only three options are: we recommend to the CCTV board, we recommend a revised proposal, or we do not make a recommendation. I don't think, and do we have a parliamentarian to determine that we can have someone make a negative motion that's not one of the three options? Just a question.
What are the three options, I guess?
I mean, there's no three options. I mean, the motion she made is legitimate. It's not an incorrect motion.
Heidi, if I understood you correctly, you said that you are recommending a motion to not approve the pilot project, or I think we said the
That is
staff
correct.
recommendation.
That is correct.
And that's what was seconded. Am I missing that? Who made me chair, for Lord's sake?
So maybe I can clarify what Michael was saying. On the first page of the item, agenda item 4, there's a recommendation, and then under that in a box there's options, and there's two options. Those aren't the only two options. Those are just possible options. So you can choose to decline the recommendation and not make any suggestions, and that's what I'll tell the planning committee and the authority.
Okay, so here the recommendation is that the PCC recommend to the CTA board the proposed pilot mobility management project is provided in attachment 1. The motion on the floor currently, and let's just maybe take a vote and see where we are and then see what other recommendations are available. The motion is to not approve the staff recommendation to the CTA board. And there was a second. We've had discussion, so let's take a vote. And then if the vote passes or fails, if it fails, then we look at alternative options. Does that sound reasonable?
Mallory, can I just ask for clarification? Is this an action not to make a recommendation, or is it an action in opposition to recommending the staff report? So I think that I've heard both, and I think it's critical.
You're the maker of the motion.
It is an action not to make a recommendation to the CCTA board.
To approve the plan
To approve the plan.
or not. That Charlie's point is
Is to
subtle.
not approve the plan.
Okay, that's subtle though. Colleen, I'm going to check with you. Is that what you seconded? To not approve the plan as presented by staff.
Okay, I'm still confused.
Okay.
The recommendation well, first she said to not recommend, which is different than make a
And that's why
recommendation
I
to
just
not.
clarified, to not approve the pilot project as recommended by staff. Is that, and I'm not putting words in your mouth. How do you have to, is that what you said? Is that your motion?
My motion is not to approve the plan as recommended by staff.
And then we have a second. Okay. So, can we do a roll call vote on the yeas or nays on this, please? Okay. Ms. Branson, yea or nay? Okay, everybody use their mics, please, so Irene can get it down.
So you're voting no on your own motion?
You're.
Wait, you just.
Oh, good Lord.
I'm confused.
Okay, if you're if you're voting yes, Sam, thanks for hanging. If you're voting yes, you are supporting Heidi's motion, Colleen's second, to not approve the pilot project to the 2CTA board as recommended by staff. That would be a yes. If you don't approve of Heidi's motion, that would be a no. And we're going to do a roll call. Heidi.
Yes.
Debbie.
No.
Michael.
No.
Charlie.
No.
Laramie.
No.
Sam.
Yes.
Mallory. Abstain.
Janet, yes.
Vicki, yes.
Colleen, yes.
2. Yes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, as opposed to 4 no's and 1 abstention. Does that give you direction, Peter?
Okay. All right.
I guess my direction is to not.
Well, I think you, well, I won't give you direction. That's not my role. But I think that you present this and you can say that the PCC, by a vote of 6 yeses, 4 no's, 1 abstention, did not elect to recommend this pilot project to the 2CTA board. That's what I took away from this. Is that correct in everybody's mind?
Yep. I can take the gavel back.
Okay. And thank you.
Okay.
I'm going to hit you with it first.
All right, so let's move this. Oh, Joanna, can you please step to the mic?
Sometimes sitting outside the circle, it's a different perspective. So what I was hearing was that due to, I think someone wrote it down, or I wrote it down.
Are you talking on the item still?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Due to the hesitancy to move the proposed pilot program forward, we are not saying a pilot program, this pilot program doesn't work or another pilot program doesn't work. What I am hearing is that somehow by West County being opted out or left out or temporarily or tentatively or whatever the conditions are, we need to visit that back with our RTPCs or with a conversation. Let's just say that. And so I think there needs to be more dialogue because, Peter, I know you don't want to go back after all of this effort and say basically we kicked it as far as we can. That can is done. We need to tell County Connection, take your money, go do something with it, but we don't have anything we can offer you. I didn't hear that there was reluctance to continue the discussion or the dialogue. So I just want to make it clear that in the capacity as a staff person for West County, I think there is still work to be done. I think there is a process that needs to be followed. The RTPCs have been contacted, have given their feedback. But the pilot program that was presented today was the first time we heard about this, and I could have heard about it Friday whenever the board packet went out. But nonetheless, we didn't have any time to really react and even have a conversation with any of my representatives here at this PCC. So I'm just not wanting to drop it in frustration or in effort that's been given to so far.
All right, thank you, Joanna. All right, now,
I would suggest that West County take the leadership, WICTAC take the leadership role in that case, and get the group together and start the conversation.
Michael?
And just a question for Peter. We are recommending to the CCTA board that they not approve this, but they would certainly be free on their own motions and their board. I mean, they could approve this on their own, could they not?
Any other? Okay, we're moving on. Item number 5, funding opportunities. Yes. Oh. One last comment. This should have been done during comment session, but we'll continue it. So I'm going to give the gavel back to Mallory.
So sitting back here listening, I'm wondering, I'm sort of hearing a desire on the part of West County to be in this pilot. I'm wondering if that's accurate. That if West County were as part of this pilot program, that then this body might go forward and recommend this plan to the CCTA board.
Item number 5, funding opportunities. Is there any funding opportunities that anyone is aware of? There is 2 federal grant. I wish I would have brought the names with me. MMSA is one, and the other one is Ladders of Opportunity, which will be dealing with, I guess, leftover New Freedom money or something like that. Anyways, if I can get that, I'll share that with the rest of this group of future that funding opportunity. Item 6, is there any future agenda items? Oh, I mentioned one for the next meeting already to Peter. Yes, Michael?
Just to follow up on the bylaws subcommittee or whatever that's going to be talking about, like, for example, the city of Antioch and all that kind of stuff dropping off, what the status of that is.
Yeah, we need to meet.
I think where we left that was we were going to have another subcommittee meeting, but mobility management got in the way.
Okay, any other questions or ideas for future agenda items? Number 7, news to share and adjournment of PCC. Michael?
In the correct order, I just wanted to point out, if you didn't all see, our TV star, Janet, was on TV. Abelson was at the BART board meeting when they decided what kind of cars they were going to have. You know, they have some design with poles, and a whole bunch of her and her friends showed up and gave the board some interesting information. So they did decide to have 2 possible models to see how they worked out in terms of where those poles were going to be placed. But she featured prominently on TV and radio.
Thank you, Michael. Debbie?
Some sad news to share. Our friend and co-PCC committee member, Penny Musante, had a stroke this weekend. She's okay. She's doing well. She's at John Muir in Walnut Creek, and I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, Debbie and I were visiting with her right before we came. She told me to tell you guys, 1, thank you for the flowers, and then 2, I left her. She said, "Tell them you left me doing what I love most," as she was rubbing down on her lunch. So.
Very, very lucky.
Yeah, very,
in terms of minimal visual damage there, that she's going to get a lot of really excellent care and an excellent program. John Muir is the place to be if you have a stroke. She'll get a lot of help. And she wouldn't have voted against you. Damn it.
Yes, Peter?
I just want to mention on that behalf that the authority did send flowers to Penny on behalf of the PCC. So.
Oh, thank you. All right. So the next meeting will be July 21st at 2 p.m. I move that we adjourn this meeting at 3:30. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, we have a unanimous vote.